The universe runs on balance. Every action triggers an equal reaction, and those who thought they could throw thorns in your path are now walking barefoot on the very pain they created. Fate has a brutal way of settling scores. The ones who laughed at your struggles, the ones who doubted you, the ones who whispered your name with envy, they're now gasping for air as the weight of their own schemes crushes them. Isn't it poetic? They tried to clip your wings, but in doing so, they built the storm that carried you higher. They thought they could break you, but instead, they forged something unstoppable. What they never realized is that a chosen one doesn't fall. They rise, and when they rise beyond reach. Their greatest mistake wasn't underestimating you. It was assuming the universe wouldn't check their arrogance. But karma? Oh, karma never forgets. And now, while they drown in the emptiness they created for you, you walk untouched, untouchable. Your silence haunts them. Your success burns them. Your very existence reminds them of their own insignificance. You are not just someone they lost. You are the proof that their power was an illusion. And here's to you, the unstoppable, the irreplaceable, the chosen one. Your journey isn't for the faint-hearted, and that's exactly why you're here. If you've ever felt the sting of being undervalued, only to watch those same people crumble without you, then you already know your power. Now, it's time to own it. Smash that like button, hit subscribe, and if you know deep down that your absence speaks louder than words, drop a 777 in the comments. And now, let's get into it step by step. And believe me, if you're a true chosen one, you won't just hear these words, you'll feel them. Stay till the end, because by the time we're done, you'll never second-guess your worth again. Number 1. Never take a diamond for granted, because once it's gone forever. People never realize the weight of true value until it's ripped away from them. While you were present, they saw you as an endless resource, always available, always giving, always showing up. They mistook your presence for permanence, as if someone like you could ever be a background character in their story. You weren't just an option, you were the difference, but they were too blind to see it. They had gold in their hands and treated it like scrap metal. They mistook a rare gem for an ordinary stone. And now they sit in the wreckage of their own ignorance, realizing that everything around them is dull, fake, and replaceable, except for you. It's almost tragic how predictable it is. They took from you without hesitation, assuming you'd always be there to refill their cup. They drained your energy, soaked up your wisdom, relied on your kindness, and still had the audacity to act like they were doing you a favor by keeping you around. But when you walked away, everything shifted. The silence hit them like an earthquake, a force they weren't ready for. Suddenly, they noticed the emptiness where your presence used to be. The void left behind? It's unbearable. At first, they tried to ignore it. They told themselves it didn't matter, that they could move on easily. But time is cruel to those who take greatness for granted. The longer you're gone, the clearer it becomes. You were never replaceable. You weren't just someone who added value. You were the value. It's the little things that haunt them the most. The way you made life easier. The way you listened when no one else did. The way you brought clarity to their chaos and gave them strength without asking for anything in return. Those things weren't small gestures. They were the foundation of their stability, but they never noticed. not until it was too late. And now they live with the consequences of their own blindness. They search for replacements, but all they find are imitations. People who lack depth, who can't match your energy, who leave them feeling empty rather than fulfilled. They keep comparing, hoping to find even a fragment of what you gave so effortlessly. But deep down, they already know the truth. They will never find another you. Their regret doesn't just stem from losing you, it comes from realizing they can't get you back. No apology, no effort, no realization will undo what's been done. They didn't just lose a person. They lost their anchor, their mirror, their source of light. And now, while they suffer in their own foolishness, you're thriving, unbothered, and rising to levels they'll only ever dream about. Because the chosen one is never the one who truly loses, it's those who fail to recognize them before they're gone. Number 2. Ignoring your inner void won't work. Your loss will force them to face it. When you walked away, something shifted in their world, and not in some minor, forgettable way. It was a collapse, a seismic event they never saw coming. They had built their comfort around your presence, unknowingly using you as a shield against their own emptiness. But now they're stranded, alone with the very void they spent their whole life avoiding. See, you weren't just another person in their orbit. You carried weight. You filled the empty spaces they were too afraid to acknowledge. Your energy had a way of making things feel stable, of bringing clarity to their chaos. Without even trying, you became the glue holding together a reality they refused to face. But here's the thing about a chosen one. You do not exist to be someone's emotional crutch. Your presence is a privilege, not a given. And when that privilege is taken for granted, you remove yourself. Now, without you, they're left exposed. The silence is deafening, not because you were loud, but because your energy was the one thing that made their world feel full. They once believed they had control, but in reality, it was your presence that kept them afloat. And now, the mask has slipped. Their insecurities, their regrets, their unresolved pain, it's all front and center with nowhere to hide. They try to distract themselves. They jump from one shallow connection to another, desperately searching for a replacement. But what they don't realize is you were never just filling space. You were transforming it. You weren't a temporary fix. You were the very thing that made their life feel alive. And now that you're gone, they feel that loss in every quiet moment, every failed distraction, every shallow interaction that falls flat. But let's be clear, they don't miss you because they've changed. They don't miss you because they've suddenly grown or evolved. They miss you because your absence is forcing them to face themselves, and they don't like what they see. And you're thriving, because while they sit in their regret, you're rising higher, leaving behind those who were never meant to keep up. Number 3. People only miss the benefits, not the person. Cut off the free supply. They don't miss you. They miss the benefits that came with you. The comfort, the security, the way life felt easier when you were in it. They never truly saw you. They only saw what you provided. The way you held things together. The way your presence made their world feel stable. And now they're stranded in their own chaos, realizing too late that you were the foundation holding everything up. They thought their strength was their own, but in reality, they were borrowing yours. You were their secret weapon, their safety net. the invisible force that made their life feel more meaningful, and they never even stopped to acknowledge it. They assumed you'd always be there, always giving, always pouring into them without hesitation. But chosen ones don't exist to be used. We exist to thrive. And when you finally walked away, you didn't just take your presence. You took back your power. Now they're restless, searching for a replacement, but the cruel joke is, they'll never find one. You were never just another connection. You were the spark that made them feel alive. Without you, they're left with an unsettling reality. They weren't as strong, as capable, or as whole as they pretended to be. They miss not just what you gave, but how you made them feel. Because without your energy, they have to face the truth of who they really are. And that's a nightmare they can't escape. They miss the way you made them feel important, the way you made them believe in themselves, the way you built them up without asking for anything in return. But here's the brutal truth. You didn't do it because they deserved it. You did it because it's in your nature to elevate everything around you. But the moment you stopped, they crumbled. And while they sit in their regret, you're thriving, evolving, stepping into a version of yourself that no longer has space for those who never truly saw your worth. You don't miss them because they were never what you needed. They were just temporary passengers in a life that was always meant to soar beyond them. Number 4. They couldn't handle the truth, and now they can't escape their reflection. Being in your presence was never just about companionship. It was about contrast. You, the chosen one, carried an energy so pure, so undeniable, that it acted as a mirror, exposing everything they tried to hide from themselves. Your authenticity forced them to confront their own lies. Your strength revealed their weaknesses. Your depth highlighted just how shallow they truly were. But instead of using that reflection to grow, they hid behind your light. As long as you were around, they could pretend they were whole, pretend they had purpose, pretend they weren't insecure, lost, or small. They used your presence as a mask to cover up their mediocrity, soaking up your energy like parasites without ever doing the real work to evolve. Then you left, and now that mirror is shattered. The illusion they built for themselves is gone, and they are left alone with the raw, unfiltered version of who they truly are. No distractions, no more borrowed confidence, just them staring into the abyss of their own inadequacies, and they hate it. They don't just miss you, they miss the version of themselves that only existed in your presence. The version where they felt interesting, confident, capable. But here's the reality. That version was never real. It was a shadow cast by your light. And now that you've removed yourself, they are forced to stand alone in their own darkness. The irony? When you were around, they resented you for it. They blamed you for making them uncomfortable. Your presence, your truth, your growth, it made them feel exposed. So instead of facing their own shortcomings, they projected their discomfort onto you. They might have even tried to bring you down, not realizing you were the only force holding them up. Now, their world feels cold, empty, and unfamiliar. They look for another source of warmth, but nothing compares. You were never just another person in their life. You were the only real thing they had. And now, as they spiral in regret, you're thriving. Because the chosen ones don't exist to be anyone's crutch. They lead, they grow, and they leave behind those who refuse to evolve. Number 5. Some only value the power they had over you. Take it back and watch them crumble. Some people don't miss you. They miss the power they thought they had over you. It was never about your kindness, your loyalty, or your heart. It was about control, your willingness to understand, to forgive, to give them chance after chance, made them feel powerful. Every time you overlooked their mistakes, every time you gave them the benefit of the doubt, they took it as proof that they had the upper hand. They mistook your patience for weakness, your compassion for submission. They believed they could do whatever they wanted, and you would always be there, ready to smooth things over, ready to fix what they kept breaking. They convinced themselves that you needed them more than they needed you. But then, you did the one thing they never expected. You walked away. And in that moment, their illusion shattered. They weren't prepared for it. They thought they had you locked in, tangled in the web of their manipulation. But you were never trapped. You were simply choosing to stay, giving them grace out of your own strength, not their control. And now, that choice is gone. Without you, they're left with a void they can't fill. The power they once felt, gone. The influence they had over you, vanished. They thought they were in control, but now they see the truth. It was never their strength that kept you around. It was your willingness to stay. And now that you've left, they don't just miss the convenience of your forgiveness. They miss the security of knowing you'd always be there to pick up the pieces. They miss the comfort of taking without giving. They miss the ego boost that came from knowing you would always choose understanding over anger. But most of all, they miss the power they no longer have. Because now they have to sit with the reality that they will never find another you. Someone who gave without expecting anything in return. Someone who saw the good in them, even when they didn't deserve it. Someone who was real when they were nothing but a facade. That loss, it cuts deeper than they'll ever admit. And while they scramble, trying to find another person to manipulate, you're walking forward, untouched, untouchable, and completely free. Number 6. Your energy is irreplaceable. Let them chase ghosts, trying to find it again. There's something about you that they can't shake. It's not just your presence, it's the force of your existence. You didn't just walk into their life, you transformed it. Your energy wasn't something they could just encounter and forget. It was magnetic, healing, and utterly unforgettable. See, most people live in a world of surface-level connections, empty conversations, shallow relationships, temporary distractions. But then there was you. You didn't just blend in. You didn't just exist in their space. You elevated it. The way you spoke, the way you carried yourself, the way your energy demanded a shift in those around you. It wasn't ordinary. It wasn't replaceable. And now, they're scrambling. They thought they could replace you. They thought they could just move on and find someone new to fill the space you left behind. So they jump from one meaningless connection to another, hoping to replicate the feeling they had with you. But it doesn't work, because energy like yours isn't duplicated. At first, they don't want to admit it. They distract themselves, pretend they don't feel it, convince themselves that you were just another person in their life. But then reality starts creeping in. Every new connection feels hollow. Every interaction lacks depth. No one else can make them feel the way you did, and it eats them alive. You see, your energy wasn't transactional. You weren't giving to get something in return. You poured into people because that's just who you are. You lifted them up, made them feel seen, gave them something real in a world full of fakes. And now that you're gone, they feel the void in ways they never expected. It lingers. It haunts them. Because the truth is, you weren't just an addition to their life. You were the highlight of it. You were the missing piece they didn't even know they needed, until it was gone. And no matter how hard they try, no one else will ever come close to what you brought into their world. That's the curse of taking a chosen one for granted. Once they lose you, they spend the rest of their life searching for something they will never find again. Number 7. They can't handle their own mediocrity. That's why they needed your spark. When you were in their lives, everything was amplified. Conversations weren't just small talk. They had depth, purpose, and meaning. Their ambitions weren't just empty dreams. They had fuel, direction, and momentum. Being around you forced them to level up, to think beyond their limitations, to break free from the cycle of mediocrity they were comfortably trapped in. But now that you're gone, that spark is dead. Without you, the air is stale. Their once inspiring conversations now feel empty. Their relationships suddenly seem shallow, and their so-called ambitions, they were never real to begin with. You were the driving force behind their motivation. And now, without you, they're forced to confront the truth. They were never as strong, as driven, or as capable as they pretended to be. That's the thing about chosen ones. You don't just exist, you ignite. Your presence alone forces people to stretch beyond their limits, to evolve, to see things in a way they never could before. You don't allow stagnation. You don't tolerate mediocrity. You naturally push people to be better. And while they benefited from that energy while you were around, they never truly valued it. Now they sit in the aftermath, realizing that without you, everything feels smaller. The world they once thought was full of potential now seems dull. The plans they were once so eager to chase now feel pointless. The energy that once made them feel alive is missing because it was never theirs to begin with. It was yours. And this is where reality slaps them in the face. They thought they could replace you, find someone else to give them that same fire. But they quickly learned that not everyone carries the weight of purpose the way you do. Not everyone inspires action, fuels ambition, or makes people feel like they can conquer the world. That void you left behind, it's permanent. And the most painful part, it's not just about missing you, it's about missing the version of themselves they could only be when you were around. Let them sit in it. Let them drown in their mediocrity. Because while they fade back into irrelevance, you're rising, growing, and thriving, completely unbothered. Number 8. Detach without warning and watch them. Panic over losing control. They thought they had you figured out. They assumed that if they walked away, you'd be left searching for them, craving their validation, stuck in an endless loop of missing what once was. What they never understood is that a chosen one doesn't beg, doesn't chase, and doesn't hold on to what's already lost. Your strength isn't in attachment, it's in knowing exactly when to let go. You don't cling to the past or waste energy trying to hold on to what has already shown its true colors. And that's terrifying to those who thrive on control. See, most people expect reactions. They expect tears, explanations, desperate attempts to fix what's been broken. But when they get nothing, when they're met with pure, unshaken silence, that's when the panic sets in. Because your silence isn't weakness, it's power. It forces them to sit with themselves, to confront their own insignificance in your world. They were expecting to be your addiction, but instead, they became your afterthought. Your detachment isn't coldness, it's clarity. You don't fantasize about what could have been because you see things exactly as they are. You recognize their presence for what it was, a temporary chapter, not a defining story. And while they're stuck replaying old memories, questioning their worth, now that you've cut them off, you've already turned the page. This level of emotional discipline, most people can't handle it. They relied on the idea that you needed them more than they needed you. They thrived on the illusion that you would always be there, waiting, hoping, longing. But when you walked away without hesitation, without anger, without a single ounce of regret, that's when the reality hit them. It was never you who needed them. It was always the other way around. They thought they were irreplaceable. They thought they had some sort of hold on your emotions. But the moment you detached, the truth became undeniable. They weren't a necessity. They were just a temporary presence. And now, without you feeding their ego, they're left with nothing but the emptiness they tried to project onto you. You didn't lose them. They lost you. And that's a loss that they'll never recover from. Number 9. Your growth will always leave them behind. Stop shrinking to fit their limits. They wanted you to stay the same, to remain predictable, digestible, confined within the limits of their comfort zone. They watched you evolve, push boundaries, and break through limitations. Yet instead of celebrating your rise, they resented it. Your growth became their worst nightmare. See, when a chosen one levels up, it does more than just change their own life. It exposes those who refuse to grow. Your progress was a mirror they didn't want to look into, reflecting their fears, laziness, and lack of ambition. While you were climbing higher, expanding your mindset, and becoming something greater, they stayed stagnant, stuck in the same cycles, the same excuses, the same mediocrity they once tried to drag you into. And that's where the divide happened. At first, they tried to hold on. They wanted the old you, the one they could relate to, the one who wouldn't leave them behind. But the truth is, they never actually wanted to grow with you. They wanted to keep you small so they wouldn't have to face their own failures. You weren't just improving in one area of life. You were evolving on every level, emotionally, mentally. Even the way you saw the world was shifting. But their mindset, still trapped in the same patterns, the same fears, the same refusal to step outside their bubble. And deep down, they knew they couldn't keep up with you. So they clung to the past, to an outdated version of you that no longer existed. They convinced themselves that you had changed, as if change wasn't the entire point of growth. They tried to guilt you, to pull you back, to make you feel like you were leaving them behind. But the reality? You weren't abandoning them. They were abandoning themselves. They miss you, but not for who you are now. They miss the version of you that fit inside their limited world. But that version, it's long gone. The moment you outgrew their comfort zone, your departure became inevitable. No amount of nostalgia, manipulation, or familiarity could contain you anymore. You were destined for more, always. And now, while they sit in the same place, watching you thrive, all they can do is regret the fact that they never had the courage to grow with you. They didn't lose you. They lost their chance to evolve alongside you. Number 10. Silence is the ultimate power move. Use it to leave them in chaos. They expected you to explain yourself, to argue, to defend your choices. They wanted you to break, to react, to get tangled in the web of their mind games. But what they never saw coming, what completely destroys them, is the one thing they can't fight against: your silence. Your silence isn't just the absence of words, it's a verdict. It's the final, undeniable truth that they never mattered as much as they thought they did. And that realization is a wound that never heals. See, people who thrive on control, on drama, on manipulating emotions, they fear silence. It forces them to sit with their own thoughts, to face the reality they've been avoiding. Without your energy feeding them, without your words giving them relevance, they are left with nothing but the echo of their own insecurity. They replay old conversations, overanalyze their every move, and desperately try to understand why they no longer have access to you. They are haunted, not by what you said, but by what you didn't. And while they spiral in confusion, you're already gone. You've moved forward, detached and elevated beyond the noise they tried to keep you trapped in. Your silence is not passive. It is an active choice, a power move, a declaration that you owe no one an explanation, that your presence is a privilege, not a right. They wanted you to stay engaged, to fight for clarity, to beg for closure. But a chosen one doesn't beg. A chosen one moves on. And that's what terrifies them the most. They can't twist your silence into something they can control. They can't manipulate it, argue with it, or force it to validate them. They are stuck, drowning in their own regrets, while you walk away untouched, unbothered, and completely free. Because the loudest thing in the world is the silence of someone who has outgrown you. Number 11. They want closure, but you don't need it. Walk away without looking back. They thought they could keep you in a cycle, trapped in endless conversations, explanations, and emotional negotiations. They assumed you'd need closure, a final talk, a neat little ending to satisfy their ego. But what they never expected was the most devastating response of all: silence. See, a chosen one doesn't waste energy on pointless discussions. You don't beg to be understood. You don't sit around dissecting what went wrong or explaining your every move to people who never valued you in the first place. When you walk away for good. No announcements, no explanations, no second chances. And that's what eats them alive. Now they're trapped in their own mental battlefield, overanalyzing every interaction, replaying old conversations, searching for the missing piece they'll never find. They lie awake at night wondering, why did you leave? What could they have done differently? They crave closure, but they'll never get it, because you already gave it to them in the most brutal way possible: your absence. See, they don't miss you because they've suddenly realized your worth. No, they miss you because they can't stand the unfinished story in their head. They need an ending that justifies their own ego, an explanation that makes them feel better about their mistakes. But the truth is, you don't owe them a resolution. You walked away not out of bitterness, not out of spite, but out of clarity. Some things don't need a dramatic conclusion. They just need to end. And instead of waiting for an apology or validation, You did what most people are too afraid to do. You gave yourself closure. You decided your peace mattered more than their confusion. And now, while they spiral in their own mind, desperately trying to find a way to make sense of losing you, you're already onto the next chapter, one where they don't exist. Number 12. They took you for granted. Now their biggest regret is losing a once-in-a-lifetime soul. Some people don't realize they're standing in front of something priceless until it slips through their fingers. They mistook your presence for convenience, your loyalty for obligation, your wisdom for something they could find anywhere. They thought they had time to take you for granted, time to test your patience, time to replace you if they wanted to. But time ran out. What they lost, it wasn't just a person, it was a once-in-a-lifetime presence, an energy that transformed everything it touched. You weren't just someone who filled the silence, you made their world sharper, deeper, more meaningful. You made them feel seen in a way they had never experienced before. But instead of appreciating it, they assumed you'd always be there, offering your light without question. Now, they're haunted by the realization that they will never find another you. At first, they tried to move on like nothing happened. Maybe they thought they could replace you, but the deeper they searched, the more they saw the truth. People like you don't come around twice. The depth you brought, the clarity you gave, the way you made them feel invincible, it wasn't ordinary, and now they know it. They sit in the aftermath of their own carelessness, realizing too late that losing you wasn't just a mistake. It was a defining loss, the kind that doesn't fade, that lingers in quiet moments, that creeps up in their thoughts when they least expect it. They miss you not because they deserve you back, but because the void left behind is unbearable. But here's where the story shifts. While they stay trapped in regret, you keep rising. You don't look back, you don't seek their validation, and you don't need to see their suffering to know you made the right choice. Because a chosen one doesn't lose people. They lose you. And that's a loss they will carry for a lifetime. And just like that, the story is set in stone. They lost you, and there's no undoing it. While they sit in the wreckage of their own choices, replaying memories they once ignored, you move forward, untouchable. You were never the one who needed them, it was always the other way around. And now, your silence is their loudest lesson. If this message hit deep, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop 888 in the comments if you know your worth. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Stay strong, chosen ones. Your best chapters are still being written.